Hey guys, we are finishing the Gospel of Matthew. That's the second book in the Bible that we're finishing in our reading plan. I hope you're feeling a sense of accomplishment as we're getting there. Day 30, Matthew 25 through 28, and Psalms 30. I want to start with the big idea today because there's a lot in the reading today, but it is this. The very worst thing that happened to Jesus is the very best thing that happened to us. Okay, that is, to me, the good news of the gospel, and someone had to take the fall for our sin, and it was Jesus, the perfect man, God who became man for our sake. So we hit up chapter 25 of Matthew, finishing the Olivet Discourse with the reminder that this time on earth is going to end, and so the parable of the 10 virgins reminding us to be ready, be awake, be ready, know what it means to be a follower of Christ, and have your heart transformed by him. Ask him to show you if you're not. And then the faithfulness, how imminently necessary faithfulness is. There were the parable of the guy with the 5 talents, the 2 talents, and the 1 talent. And it doesn't matter if you've got 2 or 5 talents. It's what you do with what God's given you that matters. And then we move from there into a chain of events, and it's worth reading twice today. And so if you if you've never heard the story of Christ's death and resurrection, then you're in for a treat. And if you have, then you need to read it again and meditate on it. But, it starts with this betrayal of Judas. It's so sad. Somebody who lived with Jesus for 3 years, who claimed to be his friend, and he's the one who's going to betray him. And we see that play out in all of its agony. And then, of course, Peter's denial. Peter, who thinks he's one of the good guys, and he can't even stand to a servant girl. And he, before the cock crows, he denies Christ 3 times. But smack dab in the middle of it is probably the highlight of the reading, which is in Matthew 26, the Garden of Gethsemane, and Jesus' prayer. I think this is really the pivotal point of the reading, which is, and of the life of Jesus. It wasn't easy to go to the cross. Jesus knew what was awaiting him. He knew his purpose. He knew what the Father had for him. He spent his life praying for that, telling his disciples and the people who were listening. And yet in the moment, he sweated drops of blood. It was agonizing. And what was the moment of pivot was his surrender. And there was no question that he would surrender, but the agony of surrender. We sometimes think, man, it's so hard to surrender something to God. Think about Jesus. The hardest part was on the cross, that moment when he asks God, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, and it was probably the most painful thing he said on the cross. But in the midst of the darkness of all things related to his crucifixion, then we jump into the last chapter of Matthew, which is the reversal, the turnaround, and the resurrection. And I really want to leave this reading today, this time with you, on a high note. If you feel like something in your life is dead, maybe you've surrendered it to God and you've seen the end of it and you're hurting and wondering where God is, remember, we serve a God who has risen from the dead. There's nothing he can not do. His breakthrough is on the way. You just keep waiting and trusting the God who brings life to what's dead. And so the worst thing that could happen to Jesus ended up being the best thing that could happen to us, so that we could declare today how good and how faithful this Jesus is. If you agree with this message, say amen in the comments and click the like button and share this with your friends. Love you guys.